Hello. It is Sunday, October 9th, 2022. It is the first day of my life living without my father. My father, Guillermo Iriarte, passed away on Saturday, October 8th, 2022 at 4:40 p.m. in San Luis Obispo in French Hospital. He was surrounded by his family that cared about him. I was there. My mother was there. My sister was there. My brother was there. And one of his sisters, Romelia, was there alongside his older brother's wife, Teresa. My father passed away comfortably. His heart rate and pulse was dropping really, really low. He was medicated. He seemed comfortable. But who really knows? And I'm currently sitting here at my dad's house. On Sunday, it is 8:41 p.m. And I started to write in detail his final week. But unfortunately, the composition book was used up already, and there wasn't enough pages to describe everything that I wanted to cover. So I want to start with the beginning of the week. We'll go from Monday, October 3rd. So my father had scheduled appointments at USC Keek Medical. His appointments were part of liver transplant evaluation. And these evaluations were to determine if my father was going to be a candidate to be on a liver transplant. My father was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver about 4 to 5 years ago. I can't remember at this moment the exact date. I want to say it was 2018, but I think about it, and it was probably a little earlier than that when he was diagnosed. Who knows how long he actually was living with the disease. And so there was a lot of things that occurred up until this point. But I really kind of want to detail the final week. My father was already in bad shape. He was in and out of the hospital a lot this year. And in the previous years, he was hospitalized too, but nothing too severe. There was times where he was hospitalized for his potassium was a little high. He was retaining a lot of water. They had to get that drained through a procedure called paracentesis, and amongst other things. Endoscopies, colonoscopies, just regular routine checks. But this week, on Monday, when his appointment, so we drove down in the Lexus together, me and my father. And it was a long drive. He pretty much dozed off during the drive there and back. My sister Vanessa, she's currently living in Long Beach. She met up with us on Monday because it was easier for her to kind of meet up with father. She decided to visit my father, this past week, and unfortunately, she wouldn't really pay him visits often up until this time in his life where he was on the decline from his disease. So we go down to USC. He had 3 scheduled tests. Actually 4. One of them I totally forgot. But in my mind, this whole time. I was leading up to this appointment. I thought it was three. So two of them were cardiology test. One of them was a cardiogram. Another one was a stress test. But in between the two, he was scheduled to have a CT bone scan. The first one was his cardiogram. It was quick, but they had, apparently the nurse said that she heard a murmur in his heart, and that could possibly be serious or not. So we move on to the second appointment, which is a CT scan. And apparently they need to inject some type of medication intravenous to be able to see better the result, be able to see better and perform a better test. And my father's kidney function was fairly low or fairly weak, and because of his kidney function, they decided to abort that procedure because it would be too harmful and risky for my father. So that was canceled. So we moved on to the third one, which is a cardio stress test. So from what I understand, they wanted to stress my dad's heart and many different factors. One of them was, a heart rate stress test. So they tried to elevate his heart rate up to 120 beats a minute. That doesn't seem so high for most people, but my dad's is 73 years old, and given his condition, that was an elevated number. That was the target, and my dad was not able to reach that heart rate. So, unfortunately, my father passed away before we even got to see the results in the following days. But in my opinion, it didn't really look that good from what the people who were doing the test, my father, were kind of, talking with each other about. So that concluded our visit. So we decided to go get some food at Whole Foods because my dad requested, certain things he wanted to eat. At this point, my father wasn't really eating much at all, and it was one of my concerns these last few weeks. He just couldn't hold down food, ate very, very little food. He was just basically living on Ensures. They're like little protein drinks that have vitamins and minerals. And yeah, so given that, that's why I felt he was fairly weak and didn't have really much energy, because obviously if you don't eat, you don't have any energy. But I also know that if you don't eat, you pretty much fade away slowly and you could die. So we went to Whole Foods. My dad was having trouble walking, so me and my sister had to basically hold him by his arms and take him into the store because he wanted to use the restroom. I had to help him in and out of the restroom at the Whole Foods, walk him around to the bar where he selected certain foods that he wanted to eat. So he got not much food for a regular person, but for him it was a lot, and he just nibbled at it a little bit, didn't really eat it. He talked to my sister, one-on-one, and I think he got a lot off his chest because my sister never really kind of seen my dad for many, many years. She'd pop in and out in his life. He'd be lucky if she saw my sister once a year, if that. And during my dad's final days, that he always kind of wondered why she never really came around, that he never really did anything to her. He didn't really understand it. But anyways, yeah, so he chatted it up. He told her some things I kind of overheard. I don't want to go into detail what that was because it's between them. I know, but not for this, not at this time. So once we left, he was kind of dozed off too. We were driving home. We had to stop and use the restroom once on our way home. And yeah, it was pretty much our day. I got home around 8, took my dad in, he rested, and that was pretty much the end of our day on Monday. So, but Tuesday at 11, he had a scheduled paracentesis at Dignity Health, our Rio Grande Community Hospital radiology department. So we took him in. It didn't take long, and they did a procedure. What they do is they do an ultrasound, and they look around your stomach area and look for a good spot where they can make an incision and put a catheter in there, a small catheter, and start draining the bodily fluids that builds up in his abs, in his stomach, because of his failed liver and kidney function. And they were able to remove 4.7 liters, which is, about 2 pounds per liter, so close to 10 pounds of fluid. And let's see what else. I think Tuesday, that was about it. We just we took him home. I just hung out with him a lot. In the evening, I'd leave to go teach 2 hours or so, and then I'd be back. Wednesday was kind of like a free day, so we didn't have any medical visits other than the nurse practitioner. She would come every week to look at my father, take his vitals, and just kind of give some recommendations to the physician if needed. She showed up. My father was laying on the couch at this time, and he was basically laying on the couch for most of the day, throughout the day, because he wasn't able to do much physically. So she walked in the door. She saw him, and immediately she saw him. She said specifically, "Wow, he's very jaundiced. He's worse than last week." And she asked me to step outside and away from my father. And she's beginning to talk to me about that my dad is in really bad shape and he needs immediate care. She gave the option of I can't specifically remember what it was called. It wasn't a hospital. It was a palliative care to kind of help my father with his condition. And the way she was talking to me, it rose concern and alarm for me. So I was talking to her about his issue with the nausea. Every time he would eat, he'd get nauseous and he didn't want to throw it up, so he couldn't really hold down any food. So she recommended he get this prescription to help with the nausea. So she called the physician, but during this time, it was around like midday, and I wasn't able to pick up that prescription until the following day on Thursday. So went to class. I taught my classes, and then I came home. My father was still able to communicate and talk with me. I didn't really see anything too out of the ordinary, considering his condition, how he was deteriorating pretty fast. So, he went to sleep. And I do remember, I don't know if it was Tuesday night or Wednesday, but in the middle of the night, I think it maybe about like 2 or 3, I heard him kind of dry heaving in his room and in the restroom, and I got up and I went over there. He was shirtless, just with his sweats, and he was induced vomiting to make him feel better, but he wasn't really vomiting anything. He was just kind of gagging, kind of like the reflex you get when you vomit. And it was painful to see. He was just struggling. He was bent over, leaning on the sink, and it pained me, and I just, I told him, oh, come on, let's go back to bed. You're not vomiting anything, it's just the feeling. And he said, but it feels good. So I tucked it back in bed. This was, I want to say Thursday morning, like early Thursday morning. So moving on to Thursday. So Thursday morning, he had scheduled lab blood work plus ultrasound and liver check, because he had his appointment on the 20th with Dr. Shaw. He's part of the Santa Maria gastroenterology. And this was a very, very important labs that it raised a lot of concern about my father's condition, but I didn't know that till later, and I will speak about that soon. So he did the ultrasound, he got the labs, and obviously they can't really tell us anything, the techs that perform the lab work and the ultrasound test. So we got that done, and that was early in the morning, so I took him home, he rested. And then we went to Santa Maria to pay his insurance for his vehicles, because one of his registrations was expired. And I almost forgot something that happened on Wednesday. So let's go back a little bit on Wednesday, because this is crazy also. So we're rewinding back to Wednesday, and we had planned to get gas for my truck, because my dad was always very adamant about having a full tank. You should never go below half, because you never know what might happen. You might have an emergency, and he would never himself allow himself to get lower than a half a tank of gas. So, but for some reason, he liked going to Santa Maria at this AM/PM off Blosser in Santa Maria. It was a little less cheaper than most gas stations, but I live in Oceano, and I didn't understand the logic of driving over there just to fill up and save a few cents. But whatever. My dad liked to go, so we went. So we didn't make it because on the Guadalupe he wanted to go to the bathroom, like really bad. And at this point, my dad was having a hard time holding in, his bowel movements, because one thing that a diseased liver, in the case of my dad's, which was cirrhosis of the liver, what it does is it doesn't perform like a healthy liver. So a lot of ammonia builds up in the body, and it accumulates in the brain. And when that happens, if the ammonia level gets too high, it causes encephalopathy, which causes confusion in the mind, slurred speech, shaking of the hands. At times, if it's so bad, you don't really know what's going on. You're not making sense. So he takes a medication called lactulose 3 times a day. It's like a thick, viscous type of medication 3 times a day, and I put it in in a little protein drink. But it causes you to have a lot of bowel movements or take a shit a lot, because that medication it collects all that ammonia, and it moves it down to your digestive system, and you poop it out. So my dad would always have to be, going to the bathroom like 3, 4 times, 5 times a day, and it's not pleasant. But anyways, we're on Wednesday, we're driving down Santa Maria, and he's like, I need to go to the restroom. So I was like, shit, there isn't anything out here. So I saw a porta potty, right? In the agriculture, there's porta potties, and he's like, I'm not gonna make it. So I just pulled over on the dirt. I got out of my car. I opened the door on the side of the road, and I because my dad was about to, about to go. So I helped him out of the truck because at this time he needed help in and out of the vehicle. So I pulled his pants down, and I told him to try to squat down, but by this time he was already kind of defecating all over, and it wasn't a pretty sight. And I kind of lost it a little bit out of frustration. I started cursing in the air, not at my father, just cursing because of the situation. And yeah, I had to strip his clothes, leave it there, and I had some clean laundry in my laundry basket, which I had to use some of my clean laundry to clean my dad up, and use some of that clean laundry to put on the seat so he wouldn't soil my seat, but it was unavoidable. It did. And I drove him home, got him out of my truck, and I helped him into the shower and where he had to clean himself up, and then I cleaned my truck because it was full of shit everywhere. And I wasn't really mad. I felt a little sad for my father because, it's my father, and one doesn't like to see someone you care about kind of be so helpless with certain things, especially like being able to go to the bathroom. So that was tough for me to see. So I had diapers, and he never really liked wearing them. And he finally realized that he needs to start wearing the diapers. And I put one on him, and he didn't really mind it after that because he didn't feel that bad. So that was Wednesday. So by this time, it was in the afternoon. He rested. I went to the gym, did my thing, came back. So now we're on Thursday, so we did the labs. We're going back to Thursday, the lab work. So he did the labs, ultrasound, blood works, and we left. And so it was early in the morning. We came back, and he wanted to go to Santa Maria again, like I said, to pay his insurance. We did that, and when we were there, he was always like, "Hey, I want like a smoothie or like a juice, something that's like very fine." And he said, "Where do you want to go?" He's like, "Oh, I know this place." I was like, "Well, where is it?" "I'll just keep driving. I'll tell you when we're there." And I was kind of like, well, I kind of don't like driving around without having a destination. I just don't like driving around just to drive. He said, "I don't know I don't know what the street is, but I know where it is. Just go down Main Street." So we're going down Main Street, west on Main Street, and once we got to the point we were past this point, we were kind of heading into Guadalupe, and my dad didn't really say anything, and I was like, "Are you sure it's this way?" And he's just like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Dad, we're on our way to Guadalupe." And he's like, "Oh, we are, aren't we?" And that's when I got a little concerned. I was like, "Dude, you don't know where we're going." And he's like, "I'm sorry. I'm fucked up." So I was like, I'll just, I have a phone. I could look it up. We went, and then I got him a juice, and I don't know what he wanted, so I got him 2 juices. I got him a smoothie. If I remember correctly, it was papaya, mango. He liked that stuff. He's Mexican. And a vegetable juice. Like, I think it was like kale, apple, and celery, I believe. Anyways, so I got him both so he could, take his pick. He got the smoothie, and he took about 2 sips, straw full, and then he was done. Again, my dad's appetite was non-existent. And so we came home. He rested. I put him on the couch again. So at this time it was maybe... Oh, we took care of the insurance, so we paid that off. And it was in the afternoon. It was after 12. He rested, and at this point during this week, I was just basically just hanging out with my dad, like at the house. If he rested, I was at the house, and while he slept, I did little miscellaneous things around the house. I picked up the front yard, maybe put a load of laundry, maybe washed the dishes, read a little bit. I come and check on my dad, go back outside, fuck around with some shit in the back in the yard, come back, check on my dad. It was just doing that. And then around 3, I believe it was around 3, it was close to 5. He's just like very faintly weak. He's like, in Spanish, he's like, llévame por fuera, llévame, dame un ride. And basically it means like, hey, just take me out, just go for a ride. I was like, really? I was like, all right. And that was a little, it was a little awkward, actually, because he wouldn't really ask me just to go on a random drive. Normally, I would tell him, hey, Dad, let's go. Come with me. I'm going to go for a ride. I'm going to take you here. And he'd be like, okay, help me get ready. But this particular time on Thursday, I was laying on the couch reading my book, and he's like, hey, take me out. I was like, all right, where do you want to go? Obviously, I'm talking to him in Spanish. He said, where do you want to go? ¿Quieres ir? ¿A dónde sea? Nomás llévame. And I was like, all right. So I choose. So I was just got him in the car. Obviously, at this point, he was struggling walking. And I got him in the car. We're driving his little Nissan Altima. It's lower, so it's easier for him. And plus, I didn't want him to take a shit in my car, so I told him we're taking the Nissan. And I could tell he was just not feeling well. My dad always specified that he wasn't really in any sort of pain-wise. Because I asked him, are you hurting? He's like, no, I'm not really hurting. I just don't feel good. He'd always just say, todo malestar, mucho malestar. And that just means I just don't feel good. Very weak, lack of appetite, chronic itching from the cirrhosis. Because one thing that liver disease does is you get this gnarly chronic itching all over his body. And I didn't specify that earlier, but that was his main thing that was just bugging him, because itching everywhere, and he had scratch marks all up and down his body from scratching himself on his legs, on his arms, on his upper back. And because of his liver was failing, he didn't have really, his blood was so thin he wouldn't clot easy, so any little scratch he would just bleed profusely. And it'd make an ugly scene, which for most people, when they see a lot of blood, they think, really, really bad, but it was just like certain scratches. Anyways, he said, let's go for a drive. And I don't know, I just held his hand as we drove. Just for whatever reason, I just wanted to do that. So, but he wasn't very talkative, right? At this time, he was alert. He was looking. He was responding to what I was saying, but not verbally. Like, I tell him to look over here. He kind of look. Hey, Dad, check it out. Look at the beach. As we were driving, and he'd look. And hey, look at that girl, and he'd look. So we went down Highway 1 into Pismo. We went around Wadsworth, checked out the beach, and then up into Shell Beach. I went around my normal route that I like. I like Dinosaur Caves, so I went to my normal spot, Dinosaur Caves. We pulled in for not long, for like a minute or two. I was just pointing to the pelicans and the seagulls on the rocks. He was just looking at them. So we continued on our drive. So I went still down Shell Beach Road, past the Shell Beach Brew, past the cliffs, Dolphin Bay, and on my way toward Avila. And we made it to Avila, and right around downtown Avila, he was just, and at this time I was still holding his hand, trying to talk to him and show him things to look at. And in Spanish, he said, ya llévame a la casa, which means like, take me home. And I was like, yeah, you sure? I was like, boy, I was planning to go all the way to the port. I'm going to go and drive the whole way. And he's like, no, just take me home. And I was like, all right, whatever. So came home, when I arrived, he couldn't get out of the car by himself, so I had to like grab his legs and put his legs kind of on the ground, grab his hands, and kind of pull him out of the car and into a position where he could stand. And I grabbed him by the arm, and he was kind of stumbling a little bit, right? And he was very hesitant to take a step because he was gonna fall. And I assured him, like, I got you, like, yo te tengo, no te vas a caer, which means like, I got you, pops. You're not gonna fall on me. You're not gonna fall on me. Just take a step. So we walked into the couch where he normally lays, and I laid him down. This was, I think, 4 by now. So he lay down. I gave him a yogurt, my little Yoplait yogurts, very little, not solid food, and he ate it the best he could. And I just laid on the other couch, the little other couch that he has, reading my book. He was kind of just resting or trying to go to sleep, how he normally does. And it was 5 o'clock now, and it's this Thursday, so I teach kids jiu-jitsu at 5:30, and then adult jiu-jitsu 6:15 to 7:30. So I said, "Hey, Dad, I'm gonna get going pretty soon here at 5." And I told him I was gonna call my aunt just to confirm that she's going to come visit him after work. So I called her, and I asked her when she's getting off. She's like, I get off at 5:30. I could be at the house by 6. So I was like, okay, cool. So I was like, so I'll leave at 5. So when I left at 5, I told my dad, obviously in Spanish, my aunt, Romelia, she says she's gonna be here at 6, and I told her, try to feed my dad, please. Try to feed my dad. Like, I know it's hard, but he has to eat something. She said, okay, I will. So I left, and I didn't arrive back at my dad's house around 7:30 on Thursday night. And as I was got done with jiu-jitsu, I usually kind of do a workout, but this particular day, I just wanted to be back with my dad because he was in bad shape already. So I showed up, and my brother's car was in the parking, was in the driveway, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, he's here, okay, that's cool. I'm not really particular in a good relationship with my brother, but whatever. So I walk in, and my dad is basically laying on the couch, like sleep, right, or just resting, eyes closed, breathing fine, and it wasn't too out of the ordinary from what he's been like, and he was just sitting on the couch, just on his phone, and I was like, well, did my aunt come? And yeah, she came. Did she feed him? It said she did. He didn't really want to eat, and I looked at what the food that I had left that she fed him, and it was basically all there. And I was like, Dad, he's like, you wanna go onto the bed now, into his bedroom? And he wasn't really responding back at this point. I don't know, for whatever reason I wasn't too concerned. Not too concerned. And so I was going to give him his last lactulose medication because he takes it 3 times a day. And usually he can drink it by himself. I put it in his hand, and he can, put it in his mouth and drink it. But this particular time, he couldn't. He wouldn't sit up. So I basically grabbed him by the hand and his arm, and I sat him up off the couch. I'm off from laying down, and I sat him up. And I sat next to him, put my hand behind his back, and I had to put a straw in the bottle, and he was struggling with sucking the medication, the protein drink out, and I was kind of like, damn. Like I was like, damn, this isn't working. So he did manage to drink, I would say, pretty much all of it. There was a tiny little bit left, but I was happy with that because he trust me, it was a task. So he wouldn't stand up. So me and my brother, we held him by the arms and we stood him up. And at this point, he wasn't even taking steps anymore. He was just kind of standing up. So we walked him to the bed, and we had to literally pick him up. And I took his jacket off, and I laid him on his bed, on his back, belly up, put the blanket on him, and he was breathing, and he was breathing. His eyes were closed, and he left, and I took a shower. He was there. I got out of the shower. This is maybe 9 o'clock. And I normally watch a little bit of TV, but this night I was tired, and around 9:30 I just decided to go to sleep. I woke up around 11, and I went to go check on my dad, and he was basically hadn't moved. He was basically the same as I had left him. So I was like, huh. Anyways, I checked on him, and he was breathing, almost kind of snoring in a way. So I went back to bed, and then I woke up again, an hour and a half later, and his legs were like hanging off the bed, like he had moved, and his legs were kind of just like slid off the bed, and he was kind of like halfway hanging off the bed with his legs. And so I grabbed his legs, I put him back. And I was asking him, hey, man, do you want some water, Dad? Do you want any water? Can you hear me? And he wouldn't respond back. He was just breathing and like sleeping. And I was like, okay, I was like, I don't know, this is kind of weird. He's not responding to me. So I didn't want to panic because part of me believed that he was just sleeping, and part of me I wanted to believe that he was just going to wake up and be, hey, I'm okay, go give me some water or tuck me in bed, because my dad had these normal patterns at nighttime where I would hear him go up, go to the restroom, get back in bed. Sometimes he'd call my name, hey, Adrian, come here, like, can you give me some water? I'm thirsty, or scratch my back, it's very itchy, and I do it. And that happened about 2 or 3 times a night, like for the longest time. And this particular day, he didn't do any of those things. So went back to bed. I didn't try to be too concerned. And then I woke up again at around 4:35. And I went up to my dad. He was still basically the same. But this time I was actually trying to wake him up. Like, I was actually moving him a little bit, trying to wake him up, calling him like, Adrian, it's me, it's your son. He's like, can you hear me? And he wasn't responsive. And at this time I was kind of already like, I was starting to panic a little bit, but I paced around the house a little bit. Obviously the lights are off, and I was like, fuck, I wonder what's going on. Like, should I call the emergency? And so many things went through my head. I was like, well, is that covered by insurance? I know it's silly, but I was like, what if I call the ambulance and it's not an emergency, and then my dad gets hit with his bill? He's going to get mad at me. And I was kind of like, fuck, what do I do? And I was contemplating, and then at some point I just said, you know what? I said, fuck it. I'm going to call 911. I called them, and this is where I kind of was a little difficult, because when I called them, they're like, hey, how you doing? This is, what's your name and your address and what's going on? And I actually broke down a little bit. I told them, my dad is, he's not waking up. He's got this disease, and he's acting, he's not acting normally the way he normally does. So they sent the first responders, and the firefighters showed up first, and they checked my dad. And right away when they saw him, one of them said, like, oh man, he's really jaundiced. I've seen this before many times. My dad had this same disease. And hey sir, how you doing? And then he wouldn't respond, and they knew it was bad. And then once the ambulance came, the other medics, they checked on him, and they put my dad in a little gurney or whatever you call him, and they they put him in the back of the ambulance, and they told me just wait like 45 minutes because they have to intake him and do all this stuff, so you won't be able to see him for, you know, a little while. So just arrive at, in an hour or something. I was like, all right, okay. So at this point, I was a little more relieved because he was with medical people, so I knew they would, look over him and figure out what's going on. I did not think that he was going to die or that he was dying. That he was dying already. I did not know. I didn't want to believe it. And so they're like, hey, we got to take him to French hospital because we found a problem with his heart. I was like, oh, fuck. French hospital? They're like, all right, so go to French hospital. Yes. So I tried to calm down. I made my coffee and made some eggs real quick to eat because I wanted to eat before I went to the hospital. So when I get there, I check in and they're like, hey, the son is here. He's the nurse, the physician wants to talk to you. So I'll go in there. And at this point, my dad's already hooked up to all these things. And the physician came out. She's like, hey, how's it going? I'm so-and-so. Hey, how's it going? And I was like, yeah, can I talk to you? And I was like, what's up? I was like, your dad is in really, really bad state. He's like, he's got kidney and liver failure. And she was looking at me. She's like, what do you want us to do? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I don't know what you mean. What do you want us to do? Like what? And he's like, well, you got to tell us. I mean, do you want us to keep him alive? And I was like, fuck. I was like, well, yeah, he wants to live. He's I got to keep him alive. He has to, you know what I mean? He's like, is he on a transplant list? I was like, well, he's not on the list currently. He's like, he's got medical appointments to get evaluated. And so they're like, well, we need to do something now. I was like, well, what's that? He's like, well, his kidneys have failed, so we have to put a tube on his neck and start dialysis and put him on a ventilator. So when I heard that, I was like, put him on a ventilator? I know that is pretty serious. And she's like, yeah. And so they're like pushing me to make a decision, and I was like, hold up. Like, I don't know. I need some time. So I called his sister, my aunt, who was probably the other person who was closest to my dad here that would help. And I told her what happened, and she was in the hospital, and basically the situation in the morning. And she was panicking, and I was like, what do I do? They told me that I need to decide this or that. And she's like, well, you have to make the decision. I was like, well, tell me, like, help me out here. No. She was putting it all on me, and I was like, fuck. And then the physician was there, and I was like, I don't know. Like, he said, we need to make a decision, like, pretty quickly. And I was like, fuck. So then this other lady came, and she took me to the side, and she was telling me about, like, hospice, right? In-care, comfort care hospice. And the other option was aggressive measures to try to keep my dad alive. And, I thought about it for a few minutes, and considering everything that I've been through, and especially my father, I kind of asked about, like, what is hospice? I mean, like, well, I kind of know what it is, but, like, what are you guys going to do? Like, what's going to happen? And they're like, well, we'll keep him comfortable until, he passes. And I was like, fuck. And that's when it got real. And I was like, well, can he wake up? I was like, is there any chance of him waking up? And she's like, not really. So I kind of broke down a little bit, actually a lot. And I remember saying, like, I don't want my dad to suffer anymore. and I don't want that. I don't want him to go through that. So I decided to do the comfort care hospice, and then my aunt called me back, and I told her what I decided on, and she's like, "Wait," I was, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Maybe we should try the dialysis because I know someone who's been on dialysis for 13 years, this and that." And then I kind of got into this little thing with my aunt, like. I was like, "Well, you fucking told me to decide. I asked you what to do, and you didn't fucking say anything." And I was like, now you're making me feel bad, did I do the right decision?" And she started crying and this and that. So then at this time I called my mom, and my mom called my sister, my brother, and we waited, and then they were allowed us into the intensive care unit, ICU, at French Hospital. And yeah, that was the beginning. This was already Friday. I don't know, I would say maybe 9, 10 in the morning. So they were just giving my dad drugs, morphine and Ativan at my request. And at the time, didn't really give me a specific time when he would pass. They're like, "Yeah, it might be today, tomorrow, maybe the day after tomorrow. I don't know. It kind of depends on him." And he was hooked up to like blood pressure and heart rate. And this was Friday, and I stayed with my father pretty much the whole time. I did step out twice for an hour or two when my aunt and my mom and my brother were there. So my brother was my father wouldn't be alone. Give me some time because I was already kind of a wreck as far as like stress, lack of sleep, lack of food, just concern, knowing that my dad, he was just gonna pass away at some time. And it was a little unreal. Like I knew it was happening, but I still didn't want to really believe it. And yeah, so this was Friday, and I stayed the night there. Friday to Saturday morning, I stayed there till about, I don't know, maybe like noon, 1 o'clock, and then other people started visiting, and it was getting kind of crowded, so I decided to leave because I didn't really want all those people in there, but I left. So. And then when I came back, the nurse was like, "Hey, his heart rate and his pulse is this now?" Because he would tell us, during over the day, Friday and early morning, like his pulse and his heart rate was slowing down, and at one point he said, like, my aunt called me. He said, "Hey, get back in here because the nurse wants to speak to you," because it was all on me. Every decision that they asked, my family was like, "Well, wait till Adrian gets here," or "He's the guy who has to decide." And I was happy that I was the guy, but it was very stressful too on me. And when I showed up, he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" He's like, "Your dad's pulse is this. It's imminent. It's close." He would just say he would say he's really close. That's what he would say. He's close. So, and I could tell the way he was just kind of breathing and kind of like gurgling a little bit, like trying to catch a breath and whatnot. And we all kind of stood around my father. I held his hand. I was rubbing his head a little bit. And yeah, until he started kind of like choking a little bit, like, and that stopped, and then his breathing stopped, and then yeah, he passed away on about 4:40 on Saturday. And yeah, you know what's interesting? I'm gonna go back because I missed a detail. So my father had passed away, but I think Friday afternoon, right? Friday afternoon. This wasn't Saturday yet. The physician started calling, right? Like his primary care physician called and said, "Hey, we saw the labs, and the ultrasound is like, your dad needs to come in like right away. We gotta see your dad right now." And I was like, no, that's not gonna happen. My dad is on Inc. Comfort Care Hospice. I'm sorry. And what they were calling me for is because they gotten a hold of the labs that he did on Thursday morning, and this was now Friday afternoon, and they saw the results, and I guess they saw what it was, and it was like, shit, it's not good. We need to get him into the something, right? But by that time, my dad was already passing away, and then his hepatologist called too. Right? Hey, this is Dr. Shaw's office. Hey, Adrian. He's like, is your dad around? I need to talk to your dad or you about the results that we got. I was like, and my dad's he's passing away. Oh my God! And they were just, I'm so sorry. I was like, yeah. And then the USC also called. You know what I mean? So they all called, right? Because they saw the results from my dad's lab and ultrasound that we did Thursday morning. This was now Friday evening. They had seen the results, and from I believe that they saw my dad's labs, and it was like it rose an alarm, and they're like, this guy has no kidney function. It's serious. But by that time, all the situation had happened Friday morning with calling the emergency and the ambulance and all that, and the in ICU, and I just yeah, that was what happened. That was my week, and it's Sunday 9:32. The week is just started, and yeah, from here on, I'm gonna live without my father, which is a little crazy. It's I know he's gone, but it still doesn't make it easy, and I have to live with knowing that I had to make all the decisions, but I did my best. And when I look back, I think on Thursday when he was asking me to drive him around, I don't know, I kind of want to know, or well, I can't ask him now, but I kind of want to know. Like, I'm thinking more about it. I was like, does one know when they feel they're gonna die? Because like I was with him. I was with him the last time he left the house with me, put him in the car, drove him. You know, we did our last little drive. And then when I brought him back and I sat him on the couch, that was the last time he left the house in a I guess conscious, alert state. Because the next time he left, the house was in an ambulance to the hospital where he passed. So, That was my week. And I just wanted to voice memo this because I was actually starting to write it down, and I decided, you know what, this is a lot to write down. I'd rather just voice memo it and keep it. That way I could share it with people so they could know, basically what I went through. And that was just this week. That was just this week. And there's so many more details during the week that, I left out. I was just trying to just sum up the major events that happened during the week. Obviously, the ultimate event was when my dad passed, but he never really mentioned that he was in any kind of physical excruciating pain. He just always would say that I don't feel good. I just don't feel good. Like I don't feel. I'm nauseous. I'm very nauseous. I'm very dizzy. But I'm not in any pain. Like nothing really hurts. I just don't feel good. He just kept saying that. You know what I mean? And when he passed, he didn't really look terrible. Like, some people might assume someone looks like when they die. But I was with my father as much as I can, or as much as I could have been. And this week, and I feel, I'm sad, but I feel good knowing that I took time off for work, both jobs. And I don't know, I think back and I wonder, it's like I knew my father was ill, and I knew he didn't have much time left. Like, I knew that. That's obvious. I used to tell myself, like, I don't think my dad has, 2-3 months like this. I just don't. But I also didn't want to believe that he was actually going to die when he did. Or that when I moved him from the couch Thursday night to his bed, that time he was dying. I just didn't know. I didn't want to believe it, but he was, or he was on his way to dying, because when he was unresponsive to me, verbally, and he wouldn't wake up. He was just breathing like he was like a really hard sleep, right? Like a really hard sleep, when someone like sleeps, you just can't wake the person up, and then they kind of wake up on their own. That was my dad, but he was unresponsive, and that's when I started to panic, and I keep beating myself up, still thinking that I should have just maybe called. I could have called the ambulance like 10 hours earlier, more, and maybe that would have made a difference. I don't know. I really don't know. But that was my story, and I'm sure I'll think of other things I could add to this, but I love my dad. He's gone. And the next thing is trying to just prepare the funeral services, whatever I decide to do. So that's going to be its own challenge in itself. So that's my week. My dad is gone, and I was with him the whole time to the end.